What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, November 17th, 2016. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We are, of course, live today, and response to all the questions. We had some unforeseen circumstances that happened yesterday. We weren't able to have the show, but it's all been taken care of, and Mike is in our control room, just heroically manning our control panel and getting everything working for us the way it should. Our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Quick little program note for next week. Well, first of all, for tomorrow, the Lady Claire will be joining us in hour number 3. Next week, of course, is Thanksgiving. And our very much overworked and underpaid RBN staff is taking Thanksgiving Day and the Friday off. So we'll have live shows Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it'll be replays Thursday and Friday. Then we're back live the following Monday at the start of the Christmas shoplifting season. Getting on to the news here, there's a video from YouTube that you need to look at, and it's labeled as Insane Anti-Trump Protesters Admit They're Paid by Soros Threaten FEMA Camps and Extermination. And it's focusing on this one guy who's out there just shouting at Trump supporters, you're all going to be locked up, you're all going to be killed, you are going to die, and, you know, and just behaving like children, really. And for a moment, everybody who's out there on this anti-Trump nonsense and you're getting your, whatever it is, $13, $15 an hour to go out and act like idiots, think about the public image of America that you are televising to the rest of the world. And is this really a good image of not accepting democracy, not accepting the election, of just screaming and crying and violence in the streets? It's not a very positive image, is it? You're not making America look good at all. Now, we're getting more information out of the situation in Portland, where the rioting is still going on, which is amazing because Portland and Oregon went for Hillary Clinton. Why are all the protests happening there? Well, because apparently the cops are just standing back and letting it run. And they're starting to talk to the people who've been arrested, these anti-Trump protesters. They found out 60% of them aren't even from that state. They were bussed in. 2/3 of these people didn't even vote. They couldn't be bothered to go out on election day, but by golly, George Soros waves a little bit of money at them, and they're out there with their signs and saying, oh my goodness, you know, Donald Trump is not my president, waving the Mexican flag and all the rest of that. Apparently down in San Diego, the situation has gotten violent. Police officers are being injured by these anti-Trump protesters. They're blocking the streetcar tracks. And it's amazing. And again, think about the image we are sending to the rest of the world, where America is supposed to be this great nation, this bastion of democracy and human rights, and we're really acting like some third world pit in the eyes of the world. Now, a lot of people are pointing out, this one's over at Zero Hedge, a lot of people are pointing out that Obama, Clinton, and Sanders could stop the riots. All they have to do is get up there and say, guys, let's please not do this. Of course, we know that Obama, Clinton, and Sanders aren't really in charge of the riots. George Soros is. But Clinton and Sanders and Obama are just kind of hanging back and saying, well, let's see where this goes. We might not have lost control of the nation after all. Obama's made a few tepid comments about it and how bad it all is. But certainly Hillary, as the figurehead for all of this, could come on out and say, look, this has gone on too far. I am graciously accepting my defeat, and you should as well. Now, we don't know how gracious she's accepting defeat because, first of all, the story that came on out where she was full-on Hitler in the bunker on election night when she realized she'd lost, and apparently physically assaulted John Podesta to the point where she had to be restrained. Now, she's made her first public appearance since the election, and she looks terrible. We put up one of the photos. It's all over the European press. Bags under the eyes, red eyes, just looking, the eyes aren't tracking. She looks terrible. Looks like she spent the last 8 days in a bottle. Interestingly enough, CNN felt it was necessary to electronically filter the picture and make her look more like her old artificial self Again, it's like they haven't quit campaigning. They're still polishing the image. They're still out there saying, oh, see, Hillary's a wonderful person. And all of this violence in the street, this is all Donald Trump's fault. No, it isn't, because it's Donald Trump supporters who are the victims of the violence. And some of this is staged for the media. There's a guy named Tim Adams, who's an anti-Trump protester, was tackled inside the Ohio Union yesterday, and then decided he was going to drop the charges because he found out Shane Michael Stanton, the guy who tackled him, was actually a Hillary supporter. And they're not sure why they got their signals crossed, but if it was a Hillary supporter, I'm going to put them in jail. But, it's a fellow, if it's a Trump supporter, we're going to put him in jail. But as a fellow Hillary supporter, we're just, we're forgive and forget. We understand these mistakes happen. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. We're talking about the continuing protest, the continuing attempt by Hillary and George Soros to find some way to subvert the democratic process. And I'm noticing out in the corporate media, they're out there saying, oh, we still have all kinds of uncounted votes in all these states. This could still be reversed. Really? Weren't the votes supposed to all be turned in and counted before the election day? What are they in the back room filling out more ballots to try and re-steal the election they couldn't steal before? It's amazing. Over in New York City on a subway train, man wearing a Donald Trump hat was attacked by one of Hillary's supporters, put in a chokehold. And again, what kind of an image are you sending to the world with all this nonsense? That, by golly, we're going to defy Donald Trump. We're going to make sure America's not seen as great anymore. We're going to give America the image of being thugs and anti-democratic, democratic and tyrannical and thuggishness, and you're going to do what we tell you to do. Boy, remember when the Democrats were demanding Donald Trump graciously accept the results of the election and not challenge the democratic process? And oh boy, look at the hypocrisy out there. Hillary's people are out there saying, well, yes, of course, we wanted Trump to accept the outcome of the election graciously, but we don't have to do that because it wasn't the outcome we bought and paid for. Now, bad news for all the anti-Trump protesters. Remember the other day when I said that in order for a color revolution to work, the general public must be made to believe that those committing the acts of violence are somehow working for the good of the whole nation? That has utterly failed. The general opinion of these thugs is they are thugs. They're out there screaming about, we're going to put you in FEMA camps because you voted for Donald Trump. We're going to have extermination people out there because you voted for Donald Trump. And to nobody's surprise, Donald Trump's approval ratings are going up because of all this nonsense. Every time one of these Hillary Soros thugs goes on out and torches another police car, it only reinforces that we did, in fact, choose the right candidate. I mean, if you look at Hillary's full-on meltdown on election night, this is not a person who should be trusted with the keys to the nuclear weapons. Now, Piers Morgan is coming out with an article, and we're starting to see more and more voices speak up. Memo to the millennials, that awful feeling you've got is called losing. And it does happen. Stop crying. Stop taking personal days off to process what has happened. Stop being snowflakes. And there's a new term that's being applied to them, the buttercups. Oh, the buttercups are blooming in the streets of America, weeping and crying. And I don't always agree with everything Ann Coulter says, but she wrote a brilliant piece called Literally Shaking. And she's talking about all these celebrities and movie stars and everything just out there saying, oh, how terrible it all is, and get a grip. And we've noticed it. I mean, we have, unfortunately, in the middle of our decline, become a very vain nation, as evidenced by the selfie epidemic. I must get a picture of me with something important. And we're seeing all these celebrities out there saying, look how terrible you have made me feel because you voted for Donald Trump. How could you do this to me? Well, I'm sorry, celebrities, I don't care how you feel. I don't care what you think. I don't care anything else about you other than what I see on the TV screen and the movie screen or listening to the music. I don't care about what your personal life is like. I have a life of my own. So stop whining. You are not leaders. You are entertainers. Gerald Salente's out there with a video. He's disgusted by Robert De Niro, George Clooney, and Hollywood in general for backing the murderer Hillary Clinton. And I can certainly add my voice to that because it was back during Bill Clinton's term in office when I got blacklisted out of Hollywood. Oh, even if Vince Foster was murdered, we're friends with the power elite. We have to be nice to them and destroy their enemies for them. Now, apparently up in California, there was a white female high school teen was viciously beaten up and stomped on by a black female because the white female was making a pro-Trump text. The black attacker has not been arrested or charged with assault, even though the attack was caught on video. And under current California law, if the victim mentions the race of her attacker, she can be labeled a racist, receive death threats, which is, by the way, already happening. Remember what George Soros said about the black population? They're the easiest of all to manipulate. Okay, now over in Indiana, State Representative Bobby Kaufman is introducing legislation that will reduce state funding to all colleges that were going along with this nonsense about, we're going to give everybody an A because they're traumatized by Trump's victory and you can take the next 3 days off and we're going to have safe rooms and Play-Doh and coloring books. That's not what education is supposed to be. And they're calling it the Suck It Up Buttercup bill, and it's probably going to pass because colleges are supposed to educate our people, not indoctrinate them. And we're going to have some very stern reporting about what colleges have been doing a little later in the show. A story coming out of Der Spiegel, an absurd and dangerous president. And I want to read you this line here. The United States has voted for a dangerously inexperienced and racist man, one who was swept into the White House by an army of disenfranchised white working and middle-class Americans. It's a movement that threatens democracy around the world. Okay, Der Spiegel, I have a news flash for you. Working and middle-class people voting for their own leaders is how democracy is supposed to work. Is Donald Trump inexperienced in the ways of Washington, D.C.? Yes, that's why we like him. He's not a career politician. And he's one of the campaigns against the electors is that, he's just a successful businessman who came into politics late in life. That description also fits George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, John Adams, all those founding fathers. They didn't grow up inside the government. They were successful businessmen who knew how to make products, how to do business, how to turn a profit, and they got into politics late in life. And they did very well, and so will Donald Trump. Now, the only thing that Donald Trump is a threat to is the established order, the oligarchs, the money junkies, the New World Order globalists. He's a threat to all of their plans to turn all of planet Earth into a single giant human farm where the rich can feast off the human population for all eternity. Now, everybody is out there still pointing fingers. How could Hillary have lost this? We had the public mind brainwashed and all these pretty commercials and all this. How could she lose? And everybody's still trying to avoid the issue of Hillary's career-long criminality. Nobody wants to touch that. But the Democratic leadership, as quoted in the Los Angeles Times, is now admitting that the economy is what sunk Hillary Clinton in large part. Because for the last 8 years, we have seen our standard of living hammered down continually under all these ministrations of this liberal democratic government that was convinced that they could take our money away from us and convince us that somehow it was good for us. And we finally saw through that. Hillary's campaign has a different scapegoat. I'm not kidding you. One of Hillary's campaign officers, Jess McIntosh, told MSNBC's Chris Hayes that Hillary lost because white women have an internalized misogyny. They're self-haters. Remember, we've heard that before with Israel. Oh, the white women hate themselves, and that's why they couldn't vote for Hillary. No, white women took a look at how Hillary Clinton is accepting money from these Middle Eastern regimes that jail, execute, or chemically castrate all of their LGBT, still allow female genital mutilation, no women's rights whatsoever. They saw how Hillary treated all of Bill Clinton's sexual assault victims and realized that Hillary is not a champion for women's rights one tiny bit. That's what happened. The lies came on out. Now, we're hearing from within the Trump campaign itself that Donald Trump has already talked to the leaders of more than 24 countries. The New York Times is trying to claim he's only talked to 4 so far. He's not really getting out there. The world is not plugging into the Trump administration. Complete lie. Okay? And in the current media, I mean, Donald Trump can't do anything right. No matter what he does, the media will say, oh, it's terrible. It's horrible. The media is still steaming over the fact that Donald Trump took Melania out to dinner, took his Secret Service with him, okay? And the media was not allowed to go into Club 21 to hover over Trump and Melania while they have dinner. They were kept outside, and they're out there screaming, see, it proves he's not going to be transparent. Well, Donald Trump has basically announced that he is going to refuse the president's salary. He doesn't need the money. He's going to turn it back into the Treasury to use someplace else. I imagine they'll cover the cost of being in the White House because the president actually has to pay for a lot of the things they use in the White House. But over and above that, he's just going to turn the money back in. The media attacks him. He's violating the Constitution. How dare he violate the Constitution by turning his salary back in for the public good? What a terrible thing. Their attitude, he can't do anything right. They won't let him do anything right at all. Let's grab a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Lindsey Graham for ambassador of the Arctic with the igloo waiting for him.
Oh, that would be good. I still want Hillary Clinton to be ambassador to Libya.
The way she looked the other day, or today, oh my God, they'd probably rather fight ISIS.
She looked deranged today. I mean, in those photos in the British media, I mean, CNN tried to clean them up, but, I mean, she looks deranged to me. I mean, looking at that face, I would, lock all the doors and bolt all the windows and say, oh, no way, this person's dangerous.
Hey, Mike, Der Spiegel is a Marxist, globalist magazine. Angela Merkel is going to lose to that other group because she is just... These people have ruined themselves. You know, do you realize that this is why we're in a dangerous situation? Because they see all the work that they've done and this globalist is falling apart. And this is where we're in a dangerous time right now because they're going to not let up on Donald Trump because they view the United States as, when Obama and the Hillary Clinton and the rest of these globalists, as the leader in that front, along with Britain, France, and Germany, and Canada. Yep. So they're not going to let up at all, Mike. Well, you know, they've got the Trump victory, they've got Brexit, they've got Frexit, you've got Greece is pivoting to Russia, Moldova is pivoting to Russia. It's all coming apart for a very, very simple reason. Everywhere the globalist agenda has been imposed, the quality of life for ordinary people is driven downward into the dirt. And you can even see it in Agenda 21. Their goal is for everybody on planet Earth to be living in little tiny huts and burning cow flaps and living a primitive lifestyle so that there's more land and wealth for the wealthy to live in their palaces. And by the way, speaking of palaces, I went out on Google Earth to Soros' address where they're having a protest for him on Saturday. Oh, boy, talk about palatial. Man, I haven't seen such mansions since I was working in Europe. Anyway, Dustin, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. John in Hawaii. Aloha. Welcome to the show, brah. What's up?
Well, you know, basically a Trump supporter because I was really afraid of nuclear war with Hillary Clinton, but I'm really concerned about the things that they never talked about my big issue is getting the chemicals and the GMOs out of the food and food-like substances. And I was wondering what your take is on the Trump administration maybe turning us back into more sustainable agriculture, putting more people on the land, smaller farms, et cetera, here and around the world. And I was just wondering what your take is on it.
First of all, leave out the rest of the world stuff. Because Donald Trump's entire campaign is, we're going to be taking care of America and making it great again, and the rest of the world's going to have to look after itself. I think Donald Trump is going to come down hard on GMO, not for the health reasons, but for the economic ones. Nobody in the world wants to buy our GMO agricultural produce anymore, and with the collapse of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the arm twisting of foreign countries to go ahead and buy our GMO agriculture and not tell their people about it, that is now gone. And so from Trump's point of view, because he's a businessman, and he's going to be saying, why are we not doing a better business with our agricultural exports? And his experts are going to say, because nobody wants our GMO. And Trump is going to say, okay, well then it's time to shut that down and go back to growing the products other countries want to buy to bring that business back.
Yeah, and also, when you talk about economics, it's the economic of organic agriculture have pretty much been proven that small-scale farming, local consumption, builds economies from the ground up and actually improves economies everywhere there is a predominance of organic agriculture. And I was wondering, do you think there'll be a turnaround in the media? What's it going to take to get that message out to people and to start taking responsibility? I'm really concerned about the millennials. Lack of responsibility and inability to do it.
Well, you're absolutely right, and we're going to explain why that is here in the very, very near future. At this point, I wouldn't rely on the corporate media to do anything at all but go on being the corporate media. But they're rendering themselves irrelevant. The focus is now on the independent media. There are more and more studies coming on out and saying that independent media did, in fact, dominate the public discussion during this last election. We've got Obama and Merkel out there crying that the Internet is what's getting in the way of their agenda for a new world order, global government, mea maxima culpa, and I take pride in that. So it's going to be the independent media that gets this out there. It's going to be naturalnews.com. It's going to be all of these little websites that are out there saying GMOs are bad because Americans are now abandoning the corporate media. They're coming on over to the independent media to learn what it is that has been hidden from them. And there is a growing cry against GMO. We had Sonoma County in this last election actually passed a bill banning GMO in their county. Now, unfortunately, that bill's not going to stop GMO pollen from flying in on the bees and the birds and the wind, but it's a bellwether that people are turning away from this Franken food. And again, from a purely economic point of view, and Trump is going to want to turn the economy around for ordinary Americans as quickly as he can. He's going to be looking at why are our agricultural exports in such terrible shape, and he's going to be told by the experts other countries do not want our GMO produce. China will not accept it. Japan will not accept it. Everybody's going to buy their produce from Russia, which is GMO-free, and Trump is going to say, well, we got to do that too if we're going to stay competitive. Okay? Okay,
I've got a web page where I have a growing guide for the people of Hawaii and really around the world. It's on supernaturalagriculture.net. It kind of explains everything you've just been talking about also.
I've seen that website. We've linked to it. We've linked to it as well. Okay, I'm going to have to let you go.
I know you've linked to it.
Okay,
thanks a lot, Michael.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're going to have to let you go because we're coming up here on a commercial break. And before we get there, real quick, I think this is very telling. Over at frontpagemag.com, they have an article, American Uprising, and they're hitting a point that we all need to realize. This wasn't an election. It was a revolution where the American people got up and stood united in front of the crushing machinery of the oligarchs. They stood up, peacefully, democratically, brought it to a halt. Now we have to hang on to it because the oligarchs want to steal it back. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones for a couple of phone calls. Then we're going to close the lines for a while because I got a lot of news I need to get through here today. Jesse in Ohio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was thinking what you said about Trump and how he ditched the media going out for steak dinner. We all know that's false. Brian Williams was there.
Outstanding. Outstanding. I love it.
All right, now, on a serious note here, I did experience something just yesterday that I've never experienced before with ID. I just got my driver's license renewed last week, and I went to cash my paycheck at the bank, this third bank. I don't have an account there. It's just where my check's written from. And the lady actually told me at the bank that my ID was too new to use. It wasn't valid enough for the bank.
Well, you know, here's the problem. The banks are already starting the war on cash. Apparently, Citibank is now saying they will not accept cash deposits at a large number of their branches. They want you using their little paper certificates and their little plastic cards because then they can make more money off of you. And it's just the way it's going to be. You know, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous. The ID is too new, and I don't think they're really harming their own business, because the frauds are going to be presenting exactly what they need to present to be able to cheat the bank, and all of this security and everything. It's just inconveniencing law-abiding citizens, and it really is completely out of control.
That's exactly what I told her, but she did offer me to start a bank account using that very ID.
I'm not surprised.
She even charged me $4 to cash my check. They would have lost money that way.
Well, you know, when you go to a bank that is not your bank and they let you cash a check, there's normally a fee, and that's kind of been.
Oh no, this was their bank though. It used to not be that way, but even at Fifth Third with a Fifth Third check, they charged me $4, but I could open a check cashing account that I had to keep no money in, could never be charged any fees. I was like, so basically, you're letting me keep my $4 if I give you my personal information. I mean, if you're getting nothing out of this, what's the point?
Well, the point is they're following the rules, and the rules have been designed by somebody to try and keep the maximum amount of wealth under the control of the banks and not under the control of ordinary people. And we're going to see that start to reverse, I think. Yeah, okay. Anyway, listen, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch to John in Barbados. He's going to be our last phone call for a while because I got a bunch of news to get through. John, what's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Glad to be back on the air, although I did enjoy having a day off yesterday, and I'm certainly going to enjoy the 4-day weekend next weekend.
Yeah, well, what I want to do, basically, is to try and tamp down a little on this groundswell of euphoria over the Trump victory, because until December the 19th, nothing is certain. Until that electoral college has actually voted, we don't know what's going to happen. And the Hillary people and the Soros people are going to be doing just like the Brexit.
I have that upcoming. I have that upcoming. In fact, there have been some very alarming developments along that line. Anything else, John?
Yes, I'm looking at what's happening now in Syria since this phone call between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin, and things seem to be moving very quickly now. The same thing in Mosul, Iraq. Things seem to be moving very quickly. We could see the end of this whole nonsense before Christmas.
Yeah, I would say probably it's going to happen very, very quickly. I mean, Trump's not even in the White House, and already you can see global geopolitics shifting to adapt to his agenda.
Well, that's another case in point. You know, if he actually, you know, these Soros people and what have you do actually corrupt the Electoral College, a lot of people are going to be disappointed.
Actually, if they try and corrupt that Electoral College, I mean, you know, they think those riots that are bought and paid for by Soros are bad. They could trigger a civil war, because nobody's going to believe the Electoral College was anything but bought, bribed, and coerced. And again, this gets into reasons that I'm going to be detailing here very, very shortly. Okay, so, John, I'm going to let you go here because I need to get into this news here now that you've broached the subject. Now, as you know, they have got a petition put on up saying that the electors have got to pick Hillary Clinton and ignore the will of the people. We, the people signing the petition, carry more weight than the voters. And they've got 4 million signatures, probably 3 million of them are illegal immigrants, and the other million are dead. I don't trust those petition signatures any more than I trust all of those provisional ballots that were coming on in at the last second to try and reverse the result here. Some of the Republican electors are out there saying that while they don't really see the Electoral College going for Hillary Clinton, they could still deny Trump the presidency and attempt to throw the White House to another qualified Republican. And I don't know who they might have in mind. My understanding of the Electoral College is they can't just pick somebody out of the clear blue sky. They certainly can't pick Ted Cruz. He does not qualify to be the president. But if the Electoral College does not come up with a majority for any candidate, then it's thrown to the House of Representatives. Guess who dominates the House of Representatives? The Republican Party. So even if Hillary Clinton hijacks the Electoral College to the point where they don't give the presidency to the man who won the election by the rules everybody agreed to play by, it could still go to Trump. And even Hillary's own people are saying it's a Hail Mary pass, it's a long shot, but by golly, we're going to do that because we're not ready to give up access to the nation's wallets and all those soldiers that we're going to be playing empire with here. But it is rather obscene here to see all this going on. And the entire argument under this new campaign is all about saying that Donald Trump isn't qualified to be in the White House because he hasn't been a lifelong politician. That he's a successful businessman who came to politics very, very late in life, and therefore we should ignore him. But again, that description of a successful man who got into politics late in life also applies to Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and John Adams, and they worked out really well, I think. Basically what these Republican electors are saying, we don't want Trump because he's not one of us. He hasn't been to the secret meetings. He hasn't been up to the grotto. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He's not one of the clique. Well, too bad here. We are now getting reports that some of the electors are already being threatened with death. That if they don't vote for Hillary Clinton, they and their families will be killed. It's an intimidation campaign, and it's been made worse by the fact that somebody posted all the personal information of all the Electoral College members on the Internet. Their addresses, their phone numbers, everything. And that's an intimidation campaign. And because of it, if the Electoral College does something bizarre, nobody's going to believe it's for the good of the nation. It's just the oligarchs trying to regain control, and that could trigger a civil war. Now, this might be a good time for all of the patriot militias, the real ones, not the fake ones set up by the FBI to wag at us in the newspapers, but the real patriot militias to just politely and gently offer their services as guards around the homes and offices of the electors between now and the 19th. Because after the 19th is over, carrying out any death threats is kind of pointless. But that's how serious they are about trying to get this back here. So looking at this Republican effort to get Trump out, but not necessarily Hillary is in, what is the agenda? Well, the agenda is the war between Donald Trump and the neocons, because the neocons still want their war agenda to move forward. The project for the new American century, 100 years of unending war to make America ruler of the world, no matter how many of your children have to be killed and crippled in the process. And that's what's behind all of this talk about denying Trump the presidency in favor of some other Republican. Now, John McCain, songbird to his fellow veterans from Vietnam, is out there demanding to Donald Trump, don't you dare make peace with Russia. Don't you go do that. Don't you dare make peace with Russia. Do you know how hard we've worked to get to the edge of a new world war? How dare you throw that away? Now, Donald Trump is making good on his promise to drain the swamp. And he's angering a lot of people, and that's another reason we got to be very careful for his safety, because he's going into office having angered as many entrenched groups, entities, as John F. Kennedy. Donald Trump, as you know, demoted Chris Christie, have thrown out all of Christie's nominations. And by the way, the rumors are still flying. The media is going to put out, oh, Senator Cotton's going to be Secretary of Defense. Well, how dare he do that? In order to have fodder to go after and bash Donald Trump, even though Trump hasn't actually said anything one way or the other. But one thing Trump has said, anybody working in his administration, if they have any contact with a lobbying firm, they must terminate their employment, get rid of their stocks and other investments. They have to be completely clean and economically isolated from the lobbying firm. So far, so good. Here's the icing on the cake. As a requirement to serve in the Trump White House, you must sign a contract that you will not work as a lobbyist for 5 years after leaving the White House. And that is going to cause a lot of people to withdraw their applications to work in the Trump White House, because that lobbying is the icing on the cake. That's where they make the money. They'll work for a presidential administration. They'll leave and immediately get a job as a lobbyist for 4 and 5 times the money. That's the payoff right there. And if they're not going to be able to get the payoff, they're just not going to bother. And by the way, if anybody from Trump's organization is listening, I am not connected with any lobbying firm and really have no interest in working for one. Not just for 5 years, but ever. Now, because Donald Trump is turning away from the neocons, turning away from the lobbyists, turning away from the establishment business as usual politicians, he's actually having trouble finding people to staff his White House. And there's an article that came out of mycatbirdseat.com saying, can Trump find enough fresh thinkers to do the job? In other words, can Trump find enough people who are outside the system and still qualified to do the job they need to do to staff his administration and his cabinet? Because he doesn't want to be infiltrated by the neocons and the old guard, and he doesn't want his administration hijacked to continue the policies of the globalists and the money junkies. So I can imagine it's very, very difficult finding people who are not compromised or otherwise influenced from the old corrupt political regime. Now, here is where the news is getting really good. Now that Hillary Clinton, at least as far as we are aware right now, is not going to be the president, the investigations into her crimes are not only moving forward, they are becoming more public. The investigators are no longer afraid of retaliation by a future President Hillary Clinton. So Chaffetz is out there, and it was on an interview in Fox News, literally came out and said, regarding her private email server, this is the largest breach of security perhaps in the history of the State Department. Now you think about that. Chaffetz is basically saying what Hillary Clinton did as Secretary of State represents the biggest breach of security in the entire history of the U.S. State Department. And that, of course, gets back to my suspicion that Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State was repeating the Clintons' 1996 Chinagate scandal, selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests in exchange for donations. So good luck to Chaffetz. I'd like to see Chaffetz as head of the FBI. Looks like Trey Gowdy's going to be Attorney General. I'd like to see Chaffetz as head of the FBI. Donald Trump will sit up there in the Oval Office and say, sick 'em, do your job. And apparently enough people are worried about this where Jesse Jackson is now out there saying that President Obama needs to give a blanket pardon to Hillary Clinton for all crimes known and unknown. Well, first of all, politics is perception. If Obama gives a blanket pardon to Hillary and her people, it will be seen by the public as confirmation. Crimes were being committed, and worse, they are being covered up. And remember what Richard Nixon said, it's not the crimes that do you in, it is that cover-up. The American people, on a gut level, resent a cover-up. Now, Hillary's minions are already all over the net saying, yes, the Constitution allows Obama to pardon Hillary for crimes he does not even know about. No, that is not true. If you read the Constitution, it says the President has the authority to commute sentences and issue pardons with an exception, that of impeachment. Now, impeachment applies to not just the President, but to the Vice President, Supreme Court judges, members of Congress. All civil officers can be impeached by the Congress, and the Constitution specifically says the President may not issue a pardon in case of impeachment. Implicit in that exception is that the President knows what crimes he is issuing a pardon for. So that's not going to work. And I don't think Obama, who is already on his final world polish his legacy tour, is going to want that blanket pardon on his legacy. There's no way to make that look like it's good or just or fair or in any way beneficial to the nation. Now, a lot of people are out there talking about how Donald Trump is not going to be able to do much of anything anyway because the Congress is still all mostly old guard. It turns out there actually was a law passed in 1996 called the Congressional Review Act. And it was actually promoted by Newt Gingrich, then the House Speaker. And it basically allows Congress to review and override major regulations enacted by the federal agencies. In other words, using this law, Donald Trump and the Congress can go on in and start to undo this Gordian knot of federal regulations that have been lorded over us by all these out-of-control government agencies. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break. When we come on back, more news about election fraud, politics, corruption. It's a very intense time. I was hoping we were all going to be through this after the election, but apparently not. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And there's a very interesting video on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. And it's a video interview of a poll worker in West Covina, California. And West Covina I know very, very well. It's where I spent my high school years. And this poll worker is talking about how on election night, people were coming in to vote, and they were told they couldn't vote because the computer was showing them as having voted by mail. And these people were all saying, no, we didn't apply for vote by mail. We didn't do any of that stuff. You know, we've always voted in person. Why did this happen? And it was almost 1/4 of the total number of voters. And this poll worker started calling around friends who were poll workers and found this was happening all over the state of California. People were coming on in, they wanted to vote for Donald Trump, and they were being told they couldn't vote because the computers said they had already voted by mail. Massive fraud. And the interesting thing is, this poll worker complained to her supervisor and basically got the brush off, saying, well, yeah, we know it's an issue, we're concerned about it, but, just go back and do your job. If there is one lesson we need to take out of the 2016 election, it is that the current system is a complete shambles. It's a joke. It is set up to allow the oligarchs to maintain control. Our elections are as crooked as those in Stalin's Soviet Union. And that has to change. We have 2 years to bring about a major overhaul of our election system into something we can all trust. And I've already put together a good foundation for how we can verify the election count from the precinct right up to the national totals. And we need to move forward on that, or the oligarchs are going to steal it back, one way or the other. Now, as I said before, Obama is on his polish the legacy tour all over Europe, and I don't know where else he's going. And he's being met with protests. Apparently over in Greece, he was greeted with signs that have a Greek sentiment, earth nor water for the murderers of the people. And apparently the Greek government, in response, has now banned all demonstrations. It's a little late. Obama's already up in Germany. But refresh my memory, wasn't Greece supposed to be the cradle of democracy, where this idea of self-rule by the people originated? Now, there's an article over at Kaahumanu.com, The Mystery of Obama's European Tour. And they're talking about how Obama is running all over Europe. He's talking to all the NATO countries saying, don't worry, nothing's going to be changing. And Obama is out there trying to convince the Europeans that Donald Trump is not going to take any radical measures affecting stationing of U.S. troops in Europe and the continuance of the U.S. basically underwriting 3/4 of NATO. Why this is a problem and of concern after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2 here, and continuing on the story, the mystery of Obama's European tour, where Obama is apparently, everywhere he goes, is telling everybody, don't worry, nothing's going to change. Trump is not going to change anything, or at least that's what he's saying publicly. And the first question is, how can Obama presume to speak for President Trump? He can't. And it almost seems like his real message to Europe's leaders is not to worry, Trump isn't going to be president for very long, if at all. Trying to keep things where they are now, because since Trump won the election, we're seeing seismic shifts in the geopolitical realities around the world, and Obama is trying to stop that. Obama is trying to undermine President Trump. And it's very, very worrying. Now, over at the Guardian newspaper, and you're going to love this one, the Guardian newspaper has declared war on Donald Trump. They're not even going to try and say we're being fair, we're being honest, we're objective. No, this is war. We, the Guardian, hate Donald Trump. And here's where it gets weird. The Guardian is soliciting donations in order to hold the new administration to account. The Guardian is asking for donations. I knew the independent media had the corporate media on the ropes. I didn't think it was that bad, where now they're having to ask for donations to keep running. Wow. That's something. Now, over this last several months, we saw our media and our politicians get into this habit. No matter what was going on, it was all Russia's fault. Hillary's crimes exposed, oh, Russia did it. Pay no attention. Hillary is sinking in the polls, oh, it's all Russia's fault. Waxy yellow buildup in your kitchen floors, that's Putin. He's been messing the corners for you. My hair is falling out, oh, that's Russia. That's definitely Russia. And it seems to have spread all over the world, because over in Germany, their head of intelligence, Hans-Georg Maaßen, is saying that Russia is spreading toxic lies to get Merkel out of office. It's all Russia's fault. The fact that Angela Merkel has wrecked Germany with this refugee nonsense and allowing Germany's economy to be pillaged and looted to prop up the rest of the EU, it's got nothing to do with it. Oh, no, it's always Russia. It's always Russia. Up in Brussels, same exact thing. The European Union chiefs are saying that all this talk about Euroscepticism and exit and everything, no, it's just Russian propaganda. All the people of Europe love being enslaved to Brussels. They love being debt slaves to the European Central Bank. I mean, they tried to blame Vladimir Putin for the Brexit vote, the Scottish independence bid. They're now trying to say that WikiLeaks is a Russian propaganda outfit. European Union, meet shark. Shark, meet European Union. European Union, jump over shark. They've taken it to a ridiculous level where everybody's just going to be saying, come on, guys. It's just ridiculous. Now, over in France, it looks like Marine Le Pen stands a good shot of winning the presidency, because the people of France are also fed up with all this political correctness and, Charlie Hebdo insulting Muslims is free speech. But anybody questioning Israel is an anti-Semite. And Marine Le Pen is also saying if she wins the presidency, she is going to boost cooperation and friendly relations with Russia. The world is fed up with U.S. hegemonic domination, military, economic, and otherwise. And let's be honest, a Le Pen victory will just pour more salt into Hillary's wounds. This, I think, is a good thing. Also, Marine Le Pen was being interviewed by a BBC reporter who was trying to attack her, and she put this guy in his place. Not going to put up with any more of the nonsense. And I think one of the other aspects that we are seeing out of Trump's election victory, it's shown the world that the corporate media are no longer the penultimate kingmakers or queenmakers. And I think we're going to see a lot more leaders willing to stand up to the corporate media and say, you're full of nonsense, and what you're saying is propaganda and lies. And I think that's a healthy thing. Meanwhile, over in Russia, the drain the swamp agenda is running full tilt. They're calling it Putin's purge, where supposedly too big to arrest, too big to jail, too high to touch ministers are being arrested for corruption. And it started with Alexei Ulyakov and has now spread to several other ministers who are being sacked for corruption. So remember what I said, I think, about 2 years ago. This push for a global government is setting the stage for a global revolution against all the oligarchs and corrupt in all the countries. If I had investment capital, I'd be investing in tar, feathers, ropes, rails, and guillotines with like 20 holes, so there's no waiting. We're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. We're still talking about politics. We're still not taking phone calls at this time because I got some news I need to get through. We'll probably open up the phone lines in hour number 3. Now, the European Union is getting in a huff, saying Italy is at risk of breaking the budget rules. And the European Commission is saying draft budgets from Italy and 7 other Eurozone countries risk breaking the EU rules. And this is setting the stage for a confrontation with Prime Minister Matteo Renzi ahead of Italy's referendum to possibly leave the European Union. Now, what are these EU rules that all these nations are in danger of breaking? Well, it's basically a rule that says work your people to death and give us all the money. Every place that globalism has been imposed has seen the living standards of ordinary people driven down into the dirt. The people behind the globalism movement, they're doing really well. They're making huge amounts of money off of this thing. Now then, down in Israel, little bit of a diplomatic faux pas. The Israeli agriculture minister made a present of a $50,000 dual-usage drone to Russia's prime minister. He'd come on down, he'd flown the thing, he said, this is really cool, and Israel said, well, here, have one, to have fun. The only problem is the drone contains confidential U.S. technology, and that technology is used by Israel under license and may not be transferred to a third party without permission. But then Israel has been habitually careless about handing U.S. secrets to other nations. Remember when Jonathan Pollard was stealing all of his secrets and giving them or selling them to Israel, and then Israel turned around and traded them to the Soviet Union in exchange for increased immigration quotas for Jews who wanted to go to Israel. Now, the secrets involved were those regarding nuclear warfare, targeting strategies, methodologies, and so forth. Had the U.S. and the Soviet Union gone to nuclear war at that time, the U.S. would have lost. That is the scale of Jonathan Pollard's treason. And, of course, he's a big hero in Israel. Oh, yes, he's a big hero. They've named streets after him, and they're just waiting for the day he'll be allowed to return to Israel to a hero's welcome. Now, apparently an unknown drone flew over the Golan Heights on Sunday. Now, technically, the Golan Heights is still Syrian territory under Israeli control, although Israel's now making noises to simply annex it because of all that wonderful oil and gas they just found that are under there. They're already selling off licenses to develop it. Yes, it's worth something. We're going to steal it. Get used to it. So this drone comes on in from Syria, just flying around, and Israel tried to shoot it down with 3 missiles, 2 Patriot missiles and an air-to-air missile fired from an Israeli fighter, and they still couldn't hit it. Now, you, of course, paid for all those Patriot missiles, probably for the one fired from the Israeli fighter as well. But it tells us that somebody somewhere has come up with a drone that cannot be targeted by the current system. So what's going to happen next? Israel's going to come to the United States and say, we need another few $1 billion to come up with a better missile that will take these drones down. Now, turning to the economy, a couple of things are happening right now. The dry bulk shipping numbers, the Baltic Dry Index, are way, way, way down. And this is supposed to be the time of the year when stores are stocking up on what they're hoping you're going to buy during the Christmas holiday shopping flog, which is really what it is. You will buy this stuff and give it to your friends and family. Apparently, 8,000 tons of paper gold has been dumped on the market. Ever since Trump's election, or yes, the stock market took a major dip during the election, and everybody said, see, Trump is going to be bad for the economy, and now it's back up in record territory. But at the same time, while Treasury bonds are taking a hit, the stock market and metals are going up. What happens every time metals go up? People sell their stocks, they close their savings accounts, they buy gold coins. So, of course, 8,000 tons of paper gold dumped on the market with absolutely no guarantee that any of these paper contracts can ever be fulfilled. We know that the paper gold market is over-leveraged hundreds to one. That means for every 1 ounce of real physical deliverable gold, there are a couple of hundred of paper ounces out there being traded as if they're real money. And when there is a gold run, and it's only a matter of time, you're going to see that whole thing come apart. And all those people with those paper gold contracts, that's all they're going to be left with. Pretty piece of paper. We'll frame it, put it on the wall about the time we imagined we had 5,000 ounces of gold for our retirement. Now, Obama has gone on a spending spree. Part of it's tied in with his legacy polishing tour, and it's now estimated that Obama will have increased our national debt by $2.4 trillion this year by the time he leaves office. And he's out there giving money to all these foreign governments for all these various projects in the hope that they'll put his face on the postage stamps and they'll build statues to him and all the rest of that stuff. Just complete nonsense. Turning to the world of immigration, apparently a migrant camp in Greece has been set on fire by a mob of the Greek people who attacked the migrant camp using fireworks as incendiary devices. What is really amazing is that somewhere, George Soros, Angela Merkel, all these people living in their little safe spaces, playing with their coloring books and their Play-Doh, actually thought they were going to blend all these cultures together and everybody was just going to forget their identity, their history, their culture, their own beliefs, sit around the campfire holding hands and singing Kumbaya. And anybody who really understands human psychology would have said, this is not going to work. But again, it is a founding principle of liberalism that you can re-engineer the human mind by changing the environment around it. And it is a fraud. It's based on a fraud. Margaret Mead's book, Coming of Age in Samoa, which claimed that Samoan teenagers did not go through the angst of adolescence because of the way their culture was set up, was a fraud. The government of Samoa has come on out and said it was a fraud. The government of Samoa held hearings. They actually found the 2 young women that Margaret Mead had talked with and said, yeah, Mead was asking these questions and we just said yes to be polite. And the entire liberal philosophical agenda is based on a flawed foundation. And that's why they keep making these huge, hideous, miserable mistakes time after time after time. Now, Obama is in Germany right now telling the German people they should be grateful for Merkel's migrant policy. She's been outstanding, in the pursuit of a global government and a new world order. Well, the German people don't want that. And Merkel is still being advised not to even try running for re-election next election, because she's going to get a real drubbing. Political correctness, still all over the place, need to deal with that. Up in Sweden, they have established a hotline so that women who are feeling traumatized by mansplaining, because a man had to explain something to them, can report them, report these men for mansplaining, and get therapy for their trauma. Now, let me share something with you. When you go through life, you are going to meet people who will know more than you do on certain subjects. You will meet other people who know less than you do on certain subjects. And it is part of the altruistic sharing among humanity that when we see somebody who doesn't know as much as we do, we will share that with them. And it does go in both directions. Leave it up to the liberals and the feminists to make the act of a gentleman explaining something to a young lady as some kind of an abusive, politically incorrect affront or offense. They're taking the most basic, natural human behaviors and they're trying to turn them into something evil for political correctness or to support the pharmaceutical industry here. Now, here is a story I want you all to pay attention. This came on out of brobible.com. There was a study that was done. Basically, they came up with this test that was given to millennials all around the world to survey which nation had the best trained millennials in terms of seeking jobs and contributing to their economy. And get ready for what may or may not be a surprise to you. American millennials are the most useless population in the world. This test was given to people aged 16 to 34. I took the test myself. It's extraordinarily simple. You have to imagine, why are they even testing for this? Everybody should know this. But this ETS study came on out and found the following. In literacy, U.S. millennials scored lower than 15 of the 22 participating countries. Only millennials in Spain and Italy had lower scores. In numeracy, which is the ability to apply mathematics to everyday situations, U.S. millennials ranked last, tying with Italy and Spain. In PSTRE, problem solving in a technology-rich environment, U.S. millennials ranked last, tying with the Slovak Republic, Ireland, and Poland. The youngest segment of the U.S. millennial cohort, 16 to 24-year-olds who could be in the labor force for the next half century, ranked last in numeracy along with Italy and among the bottom countries in PSTRE. In literacy, they scored higher than their peers in Italy and Spain, but lower than everybody else. Top-scoring U.S. millennials in the 90th percentile scored lower than the top-scoring millennials in 15 of the 22 participating countries and only scored higher than their peers in Spain. Low-scoring millennials, those in the 10th percentile, ranked last, along with Italy and England, North Ireland, and scored lower than millennials in 19 participating countries. Now, what's going on here is our kids are being given diplomas by colleges as a lure to get them into that student loan debt trap, but they're not actually getting anything useful out of it. They've got degrees in indigenous women's interpretive dance, and they know how to use a cell phone and take a selfie, and they supported Israel. They support Hillary. They have participation trophies. They believe they're exceptional. They're not. Thank you, Common Core. And this goes right to the heart of something I was saying the other day. Back in the 1960s, liberals really did represent the intellectual elite. But since then, anybody who's insecure about how smart they are just grabs onto that label, liberal, and then they can say, I'm a liberal, therefore I'm smart and educated, and that's all I need to know. And yet my experience in talking to liberals over this whole Trump-Hillary campaign is they're very uninformed, they're very narrow-minded, they think that watching TV news tells them all that they need to know, and that if they don't know something, it's not important to know. They are, in other words, arrogant in their ignorance. And this ETS study is a wake-up call. And that's going to be a big problem for Donald Trump. Our young people really have been dumbed down. They can't hack it in the modern technological global marketplace. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're getting a story now that reporters are being attacked at the anti-Trump riots and told not to film them. And I think it's because they understand when people actually see these rioters, it's not presenting a sympathetic image. And apparently the protesters are at the point where they're literally handing out leaflets to people saying, do not record what we're doing. Apparently they're very angry that somebody was reporting 60% of the Portland protesters had been bussed in from out of state. They don't want any immediate first-person evidence of what's going on so that the corporate media can say, oh, it's a very polite, well-ordered demonstration of First Amendment rights and outrage and blah, 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 blah. Not that anybody's listening to the corporate media any longer. Now then, James Clapper has announced that he will resign as U.S. Director of National Intelligence at the end of the Obama administration. And, of course, Clapper carries with him into his historical legacy the revelation by Edward Snowden that the NSA has been in complete violation of the 4th, 5th, 9th, and 10th Amendments, spying on law-abiding American citizens and hopelessly unable to actually find any real terrorists or ransomware writers or cyber criminals. So long, James. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Now, as you know, the corporate media has really had it with that uppity independent media. How dare they come on in and point out where we're lying and propagandizing? Don't they understand we have to make a living? We have to make payments on those supercars and those mansions that we live in. And the only way we can make that money is to whore ourselves to the money junkies and corporations. How dare they interfere with that? So they're launching this campaign to declare anything that is not on their corporate media outlets is fake news, and that everyone should believe it. Now, they've already had to backpedal, because the first response that came on out was to remind the corporate media that they were out there claiming that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons, that Assad was using sarin gas on his own Alawite supporters, and throughout history, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, Lusitania carrying weapons, and on and on and on. So now the corporate media is saying, well, we've made some mistakes, and they're honest mistakes, but really, you go out to that independent media, you're going to see absolute fringe, kooky, completely fake news, like Vincent Foster was actually murdered, and the sun controls climate on Earth, and just complete, utter nonsense like that. Donald Trump has already stepped to the fore to defend the independent media, knowing what he owes the independent media, and he's blasting the corporate media and saying, you're the ones spreading the fake news. And he's absolutely right. And the fact that he's got Bannon as his chief policy advisor signals the corporate media is now out and the independent media is in. Now, Google and the corporate media have now launched an attack on all independent media. Gosh darn, we're going to, anything that's fake, we're going to withhold our advertising. We're going to block the links to them. And, of course, they're arrogating to themselves the right to decide what is fake and what is not. What is real? Well, humans are warming the earth. Saddam had nuclear weapons. There's only 5% unemployment. What's fake news? Well, there's almost 100 million unemployed Americans. That's got to be fake. We can't let the American people say that. Climate is dominated by the sun, and the sun is right now in the middle of a cooling phase. Can't let the American people see that. That's got to be fake. It's flat-out censorship. It's a violation of our First Amendment rights. And I would like to send a message to my fellows within the independent media urging caution, because what we're going to see right now is a concentrated effort to plant stories in the independent media that can be discredited to embarrass us, or worse, lure us into making a comment or statement for which we could be sued and held up for public ridicule. We have to be even more professional than the professional journalists in how we conduct our websites and our radio shows. We must be careful. There literally is a war on right now over who's going to be controlling the minds of America. The corporate media is a little late to realizing they lost. And now they're trying to figure out how they can get it back, because they don't want to give up those $1 million paychecks anymore. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Mateus in Canada. Aloha. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Michael. Connection sounds bad on my end. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, that's good. So regarding electors, until we get past that process, it's still a relevant topic, and we need to stay on top of it in case they try to pull some funny business. So I just want to give my analogy on
hang on.
How electors work.
Hang on. Were you not listening earlier in the show? Hillary's supporters are threatening the lives of the electors. If they don't vote for Hillary, they and their families are going to be killed. Somebody has posted all the personal information on all of the state electors online, where they live, where they work, their phone numbers and everything. I mean, it's a very, very serious situation out there.
Wow, I'm sorry I didn't catch it earlier. That's incredible. Okay, so my analogy here, if you have 50 lemons and you have a game of who can get the most lemon juice, that would be a popular vote game, right? That would have different rules. If the rules were who can squeeze 51% of the juice out of each lemon, it's a totally different game. So, for example, if you're going for a popular vote, then if you squeeze the lemon and you get 49% out pretty easily, you're not gonna stick around worrying about a couple more drops that are hard to get 51%.
Yeah, that's a valid point to make. That's the
easy one.
That's a valid point to make, and we made it in the little graphic that we had at the top of our website for a while, which a lot of people have been writing in and asking for copies. In all of these states, once Donald Trump had a majority, he quit campaigning. He wasn't going to waste any more time or any more money there because he had the state's electors. That's the way the game is played. If it had been a popular vote, Trump would have changed his campaign strategy. He would have focused on the states with the largest population densities, and he still would have won. But here is the problem. Donald Trump won by the rules that everybody agreed to play by going on in, and now that he has won, Hillary and George Soros and all the buttercups and the snowflakes want the rules changed so that they can have the outcome they want. And this is what you get when you have a society that gives out participation trophies. Everybody thinks that if they just scream and cry enough that they'll be declared a winner. Well, I'm sorry. This is at the schoolyard. This is national politics and the future of the war agenda. And they are coming across as crybabies, and I guess that's why now they're threatening reporters not to videotape the protests anymore, so the protests can be described as whatever corporate media sees fit to describe them as.
Right. Now, imagine you're Trump's campaign. You're in enemy territory. You've got 49% of the popular vote. It's really hard to get any more. The votes are really hard to get. They're expensive. They take lots of time. But you're going to stay there because you need that 51%. So the votes cost 3 times as much each. They take 3 times the time, but you're sticking.
Okay, I think Mateus, you've made your point. You've made your point. Okay, and we're going to switch over now to Terry in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you remember when Bob Dornan ran? He was a representative down in Orange County, and he ran against Loretta Sanchez. It was then 15 years ago, I guess. And all of a sudden, Loretta Sanchez won, and nobody could figure it out because the odds were so much in favor of Bob Dornan. And then he accepted it, gave a speech, and then she took over. And then years later, they found out there's no question that all these people that voted were illegals. And then, I mean, both sides agree. Everybody agreed that that's what happened after a number of years. And
yet we had Hillary's people, we had Hillary's lawyers all over the country trying to strike down voter ID laws everywhere, saying, oh, it's racist to not let illegal immigrants vote in U.S. elections. And again, the current estimate is from votefraud.org, 3 million non-citizens voted in this election. You have to subtract that number from Hillary's popular vote before you start screaming that she won the popular vote. You also need to subtract the 1.2 million dead voters. And we have no idea how many of those computerized machines were stealing votes from Donald Trump and giving them to Hillary Clinton. She tried to steal this election. The way she stole the nomination, she came up short, and now she and her people are just throwing tantrums and rolling around and screaming and trying to find some way that they can cling to power. And if they play some kind of game with the Electoral College, or if they assassinate Donald Trump, it could trigger a civil war. And I know whose side I'm going to be on if that happens.
I'll be on your side, Mike.
Thank you.
But when I was in the 1940s, when I started grade school, my mother had to take my birth certificate to get me in the school. She had to prove that I was her son and she was a citizen of the United States. Now, today we don't have to do any of that because it's discriminatory.
You know, what's weird is these illegals and refugees can come on in and get all the goodies, but the last time Claire and I had to renew our driver's licenses, we got in just a few days before the rules changed, where to get a driver's license in the state of Hawaii to conform with the Real ID Act, we had to have our birth certificate, our original Social Security card. We had to have all this stuff here. They're actually making it hard for legal American citizens to prove that they're citizens, but the illegal immigrants and the refugees come on in and it's just handed to them. It's completely bonkers.
Well, that's what happened to me in South Dakota. I had to bring all that stuff in to get my license renewed, and they put a gold star on there. And at the time, I thought this is the way that the feds want to get a national ID card. They want the states to verify everybody, and an ID card to keep track of you. And then, of course, it was all reversed after that. Okay, Mike, I made my point. I appreciate your show, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to go back to the news for a little bit here. Michael in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, yes. Aloha, Michael. Yes, unfortunately, civil war looks inevitable, and when it breaks out, all the patriots should wear the Star-Spangled Banner on their arm, and then we'll know who's who. So we can take out the enemy all the way to Obama and the Clintons and the Bushes. They all got to get cleaned out. But I'm calling specifically about after the election, the media propaganda machine kept hyping how Clinton took the popular vote, which, of course, is pure nonsense. And I even believe here in New York, they stole New York from Trump as well. Outside of the city urban areas, Trump had all the votes for the most part. So at this point, wondering, okay, you know, they're trying to make it look like she got the popular vote. Here's the reason why. It's keeping their foot in the door on the election, trying to finagle some kind of maneuver before he gets sworn in so that they can sway the Electoral College most likely. And, of course, I can't see it flying, but look how divisive and persistent they are with trying to steal this country, our government and our country out from the people's hand.
Well, remember what John F. Kennedy said. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. History certainly vindicates that or validates that time and time again. I don't want to see that in the streets of America, but we have never seen such obvious attempts to hijack the election by a sore loser. Richard Nixon, when he had his election stolen by John F. Kennedy, even he understood that attempting to challenge and contest that could have resulted in serious damage to the nation, and he stood down. In this case, the person who tried to steal the election has lost and is still trying to contest the election. Have you noticed how, with all the talk about popular vote this and all the rest, and how bad Trump is, Hillary has not asked for a recount anywhere. She's not asked for an investigation into election fraud because she knows if there ever was a recount or an investigation into the election fraud, it would reveal that Hillary and her people were the fraudsters in this election. I mean, down in Florida, DNC lawyers that are there for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, are trying to deflect a class action lawsuit by Bernie Sanders supporters who are demanding a refund of all the money they gave to the Democratic National Committee on the premise that the Democratic National Committee was going to go along with the will of the rank-and-file Democrat voters, which was Bernie Sanders. And the DNC lawyers have admitted in court, of course we sabotaged Sanders and we gave the nomination to Hillary. And those Bernie Sanders supporters should have known that. They were just being dummies not to understand what we're doing. Therefore, they're not entitled to a refund. So you have the DNC admitting that Hillary Clinton should not have even been on the ballot. It should have been Bernie Sanders. And the fraud is continuing. And what they can't cheat, they're going to try and steal through violence and thuggery. I mean, again, go back and look at that video of one of these Trump protesters screaming about how anybody who supported Trump is going to wind up in a FEMA camp and we're all going to be exterminated. I mean, this is right out of the rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany with the brown shirts, threatening anybody who questioned the Führer.
Exactly. That's the exact correlation that I would use all the time. Brown shirt, all the way activity. And last real quick, you know what's hilarious, and I'm surprised, these babies, when you have a local school vote for your budget, and if it doesn't pass, what do? They tell you got to vote again, right? It's that pathetic. It's that outrageous. Well, we don't accept that. We're going to vote on it again until it passes. You think these whining baby wussies would have, through the propaganda media, would have tried that one on us nationally? Of course, it wouldn't fly. But they're so pathetic. I was surprised they didn't even try. Oh, we got to do the election over. Well, let's vote again.
They might be trying to build a case to have the election all over again. They're already over in Great Britain. They're trying to do that, saying, well, we don't like the way the Brexit vote came out. We should have another election and give our vote stealers another try to swing it the way we want to have it.
There you go.
Yeah, it really is. It's very, very dangerous. These people are just caught up. They're true believers. They think they're intellectual elites because they call themselves liberals, and yet that test of the millennials and their ability to actually do useful work tells us the dumbing down of Americans has succeeded. We have a population of morons who are convinced they're intellectually superior.
Common Core morons.
Yes.
From the government brainwashing school system, Michael, that's for sure. And there you go. What you just cited proves my point. They will try to make us redo the election because it didn't go their way. And what we're dealing with is a global United Nations, one world government system hell-bent on subjecting us, and they will not drop it. They will not go away now that Trump has been elected by the American people. They will not go away, and hence, no question about it, they will cause enough chaos and strife internally within our country to provoke probably a civil war.
You know, I always joke all the time about guillotines and, you know, one with 20 holes, no waiting and everything. It could actually come to that. It could actually come to that where the oligarchs and the money junkies are so absolutely convinced of what they believe, their minds can't be changed. And it could come to that. I don't want to see it, but it is a real possibility. Michael, we're going to let you go. I'm going to take one more phone call, then we're going to do some news for a while. Thank you. Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Kyle. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Well, I wanted to talk about Trump's qualifications for president. Now, as far as I know, he's over 35 years old. He is an American citizen.
Born inside this country.
America.
Yep.
I think that about covers it, right?
Yeah, that's all the Constitution says you have to be President of the United States of America. Somebody wrote in and reminded me that Ronald Reagan wasn't a career politician either, although he was governor of California before he was president. And again, go back to the Founding Fathers. None of those people were career, lifelong politicians. In fact, the government they set up was designed to not have a permanent ruling class of career politicians. Serving in the government was a part-time honorary position, and the rest of the time you were supposed to go on back and support yourself with whatever it was you did in your day job.
Furthermore, I think the president speaks to the fundamental values of America, that we are not separate from our government, that there are no ruling oligarchies, there are no bloodlines, there are no, you have to be from this particular, pedigree to be a ruler. Any man who meets the qualifications of being over 35 years old and being a U.S. citizen born in America, you can be president. And I think that's a great message that people need to embrace.
You are right. That is a very, very good message. Go back to the Constitution and see if Donald Trump is qualified to be president. He's certainly far more qualified than Ted Cruz ever was. Yes, he meets the qualifications. Over 35, American citizen, born in this country. He's qualified to be the president of the United States of America under that Constitution. Anybody who says otherwise is being unconstitutional. Okay?
I know it's strange in this country. I think it's strange in this country that for the past 20 years we've had Bushes and Clinton and an Obama thrown in there. But no, we don't have a royal family. Anybody can be president who meets those
Well, they were trying to establish two royal families, a ruling duocracy. The plan was to pass the White House off from Bush to Clinton to Clinton to Bush to Bush to Clinton. Obama got inside on them because Hillary didn't really have the legs to win in 2008, or she didn't have her election stealing machinery as firmly in place as she did this time. But she lost. And it's time for Hillary and her people to say, we lost. We had the election by the rules everybody agreed to play by ahead of time, and Donald Trump won, and you have to get used to it. Anything that you do that tries to change that outcome is treason against the United States, it's treason against the American people, it's treason against the Constitution, and nobody is going to believe that the Electoral College has any kind of a moral right to say, well, we have decided over the American people that Donald Trump can't be president, and we're going to give it to Mitt Romney, or we're going to give it to Ted Cruz, or failing that, Hillary Clinton. Like I said, I'm very concerned that there will be an assassination attempt on Trump before the December 19th, which would leave the Electoral College free and wide open to hand it to Hillary Clinton. So, Trump's people, keep the Kevlar handy. What can I tell you? Kyle, we're going to let you go here. I need to do some real news here. We're going to do some news for a while. We were talking about how corporate media and the corporate-owned social media on the Internet have declared war against the independent media, freedom of speech, diversity of opinion. Twitter has initiated a mass purge of alt-right accounts. They've just gone on a binge, just canceling accounts left and right. It's almost like social media is trying to engineer a situation in which nobody can get out any messages questioning Hillary's agenda or supportive of Donald Trump. Quantcast has now blacklisted InfoWars as a fake news site. Now, this is an attack on freedom of speech. I don't agree with Alex Jones on a lot of the things that he says, but he has a right to his opinion as I have a right to mine. And we shouldn't have these large corporations that are aligned with the Clintons and Bushes saying, well, we're going to control what the people sees. That is a complete violation of the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court has ruled in the past, as new technologies came along, they fell under the purview of the First Amendment. When the First Amendment was passed, the only mass media were newspapers. Then telegraph came along. Then radio. Then eventually television. And now the computer internet. All of them are protected by the First Amendment, and we're seeing all of these corporate interests defying that. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about this open war by the establishment against the independent media because we got in their way. We got in the way of their globalist plans. We got in the way of their war agenda. How could you do that to us? Well, because we're actually doing what the corporate media claims to do. We're acting as a watchdog on government abuse. That was the contract from the Founding Fathers. The reason the First Amendment guaranteed freedom of speech was so that anybody could stand up and say, the government is wrong here without fear of retaliation. That's why that's there. That was the contract. And the corporate media has abandoned that role. Now, apparently, over at Merrimack College, the assistant professor of communications, Melissa Zimdars, has come up with a list of all of those independent media websites that are full of fake news. And they have, Prison Planet is on there, Hang the Bankers, Government Slaves. I mean, you will recognize the names. For some strange reason, I didn't make the cut. I didn't make the team. I can't tell you how crushed I am that I didn't make the list of websites that Misha seems to feel are full of fake news. I'm going to have to get some Play-Doh and some coloring books and go into my safe space and just process what has happened because I feel so terrible. I'll just have to go back and polish up my little plaque from the Southern Poverty Law Center that names my website One You Should Never Read or Your Nose Will Drop Off the Front of Your Face. Meanwhile, over at Facebook, which is setting itself up as the arbiter of what is fake and what is real, they've been forced to admit to another glitch. They've had another silly little glitch that overstated their ad metrics. In other words, they're cheating their advertisers. This little glitch. It was just an accident. Honest, we would never, ever do anything like actually fraudulently inflate impressions to make more money. It's silly for you to think about that. Now, Edward Snowden has come on out saying that we shouldn't be dependent on Facebook as a news source because it is just one company. It clearly has a bias. They're using their presence in the market to reshape the way we think, and that is very dangerous, and he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Now, there's a call over in OccidentalDissident.com for President Trump to nationalize the social media and treat it like a public utility. Trump certainly would be very sympathetic given how the social media was openly biased against him during this last election. Now, as I mentioned, Twitter is already scrubbing accounts. The Southern Poverty Law Center is applauding, saying, you know, we should destroy all websites of well-known white supremacists. Now, the problem with that is, right now, in the current political climate, well, I'm going to finish this on the other side of the station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about how Twitter has started shutting down accounts for anybody supportive of Donald Trump. And Southern Poverty Law Center is out there saying, we applaud this action. It's time to get those white supremacists. And the problem here is in the current political climate with the liberals still in charge until Donald Trump's inauguration. Anyone supportive of President Trump is being declared a white supremacist in the corporate media. Oh, he only won because all the racists voted for him. But Twitter and the Southern Poverty Law Center are not at all concerned about the Black Lives Matter tweets calling for whites to be made a minority or in extreme cases exterminated. They don't seem concerned about that at all. It's only racist when it's the white people. Now, it appears there is now an organized campaign to silence opposition to Hillary ahead of her push to hijack the Electoral College and buy the presidency out from under Donald Trump. And I think given the abuses of these large corporations in what is now, for all intents and purposes, a public utility, something ought to be done. Now, nationalization might be seen as too extreme, but a taxpayer-funded public social media system looks like an ideal solution to me, one that is under the constraints of the Bill of Rights. And by the way, alternatives to all of these companies are now surfacing. There's a new search engine out there called goodgopher.com. It is rising rapidly. It actually has a button that you can push where it searches only the independent media to get the real news. And I went out there and checked it out. It's pretty good. My site's already listed with it. Then there's Yandex. Now, Yandex is a search engine that's being run out of Russia. It does not have the built-in liberal bias that you see in Facebook and Google and all the rest of it. Yandex has also come out with their own browser, which I tried it out. It's actually pretty good, and I'm going to start using that one because I don't have to worry about Google somehow getting, what bikini model pages I'm looking at today. I actually trust Russia to be much more respectful of my privacy than I do the U.S. government. And the corporate media is out there just arbitrarily saying, well, everything the independent media said is fake. Even stuff that a little research shows to be absolutely true, especially all the stuff coming out of the WikiLeaks, the DC email leaks, all the internal documents from the State Department, from Hillary's office, from the campaign that all came out. It's all true and verifiable. But the corporate media is out there saying, no, it's all lies. None of it ever really happened. Really, you have to come back to the real news over here at the corporate media. And one example is over in the Independent in UK. Donald Trump supporters get their news from a strange media universe, and it's frequently fact-free. And literally came on out and said there have to be more gatekeepers on the independent media. This coming from the same newspaper that on March 20th, 2000, supported the global warming fraud with the headline, "Snowfalls are now just a thing of the past," written by Charles Onions. And let us not forget, the UK Independent was fully on board with the story that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. I don't think I need to go any further here. Meanwhile, CNN's actual viewership numbers continue to decline. There's actually a trending Twitter tag, if Twitter hasn't shut it down already, blackout CNN. Speaking of CNN, Don Lemon, in the middle of his show, showed footage of the Reagan assassination attempt for 20 seconds without a word of explanation. Is he trying to plant an idea out there someplace? Over at the State Department, John Kirby decided that he was going to declare Russia Today not real media as well. And basically, Kirby was out there accusing Russia of bombing hospitals while saying he's not accusing Russia of bombing hospitals. Russia Today said, can you tell us what hospitals are involved? Kirby said, well, no, I haven't seen the bombed hospitals. I can't name the hospitals. I don't know the sources we got this from. And then he says, Russia Today is not a credible news organization. Then another reporter from another media outlet tries to tell Kirby it's a legitimate question. And he loses it, loses his temper, shouts insults at everybody. It's just absolutely insane. Glenn Beck is out there saying, we're racist if we accept Steve Bannon in the White House. That's become the catch-all phrase. If they don't like you, if the liberals don't like you, you're being a racist. The reason they don't like Bannon in the White House is because he is from the independent media. He signals that the Trump White House is going to be very sympathetic to the independent media. We're going to have a long battle between now and inauguration, because the war is on. The corporate media has decided to declare war on the independent media because they're just really tired of all of their lies and propaganda being exposed. David P. Goldman over at Breitbart is saying the rage of the defeated and humiliated elites is now focused on Bannon. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And Goldman is saying all of these attacks on former Breitbart executive Stephen K. Bannon are the expression of the rage from all these corporate media entities who cast their lot with Hillary Clinton on the promise that she would shut the independent media down, and now they're not going to get it. So they're out there screaming and crying. Now, I have a message to the corporate media. I hear your rage and upset. I understand only 6% of Americans still trust you. And we here in the independent media now command the majority of the American audience. So, and despite some faux repentant editorials, you do what you do best, launching a campaign against the independent media, labeling us all as fake news, relying on insults, smears, rumor, and innuendo. And I find this amusing, since it was you, the corporate media, that told us Saddam had nuclear weapons, that Assad was using sarin gas against his own Alawite supporters in front of the UN chemical weapons inspectors, literally on the day those inspectors arrived, and the UN concluded it was actually the U.S.-backed rebels who did this. And you never reported that. You, the corporate media, told us there'd be no more snowfalls after 2000, that Hillary was winning by 12 points, that a little radiation is actually good for you. And this isn't a recent trend. Torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, Lusitania not carrying weapons, Pearl Harbor a complete surprise. All of these headlines in the corporate media have been discredited by time. Now, we all look back at Nazi Germany and recognize how their corporate media propped up and supported the Nazis and lied to the German people to convince them the government was good and that you should go along with the government policy. Didn't work out very well for Germany. We look back and realize how the corporate media in Stalin's Soviet Union did exactly the same thing, plus the rigged elections that Stalin used to brag about. And it didn't work out well for the Soviet Union. They're not around any longer either. Now, you in the corporate media may moan and complain and cry at the rise of the independent media, but you should actually be very proud. You in the corporate media created us with your lies to the American people. We would not exist were it not for decades of propaganda being shoveled at us in support of corporations and the war agenda. You made us. We are your children, as unloved by you as we may be. And as is true generation after generation after generation, eventually, all children outstrip the parent. There we are. Now then, it's now being acknowledged in a wide variety of corporate media outlets that, yes, the independent media outstripped the corporate media during a presidential election. They're going on out and actually looking at who was getting the hits. Where were people going to get their information? And the independent media was well ahead. And they're just crying. And they're paying the price for their betrayal of the American people. Univision has had at least 200 layoffs. The Daily News is reporting a steep decline in circulation. Huffington Post's owner, America Online, has laid off 5% of the staff. 500 workers are losing their job over there. And I don't have a bit of sympathy for you. You did it to yourselves. All right, let's take a couple of phone calls. Wes in Idaho, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. For economic miracles, should not Trump adopt Hitler's policies?
Well, I think instead of describing them as Hitler's policies, we should go back and say that Donald Trump should go back to the system of economics our nation started with, because it worked really well for the nation and the people. It's not very good for those money junkies over in the private central banks, but that may be too dramatic a move for Donald Trump to make. But what he could do, is he could repeat John F. Kennedy's Executive Order 11110 and simply say that we're going to have currency here that is based on value, not debt. Now, of course, that's one of the reasons Kennedy got killed, and I'm sure that Trump's people are well aware of that. But with a public that's aware that that was one of the motives for John F. Kennedy's assassination, and we're coming up on that anniversary here in another few days, that might help protect Donald Trump. The more aware the general public is of how the bankers are behind the wars and the assassinations, the more difficult it is for them to try and do it again. I actually had a reader write on in and ask to repost All Wars Are Bankers' Wars to the front page of What Really Happened, which I have done, even though it's permanently linked up at the top. But you need to understand that the money power is trying to hold us as their slaves.
Trying to figure out who is the bigger Hitler basher, you or Alex Jones?
Well, I think at this point it's kind of irrelevant. We all agree that Hitler messed up on a whole bunch of things. And, I don't subscribe to the Orthodox story of the Holocaust. And I think Hitler was genuinely motivated to do what was right for the German people when he got rid of that private central bank. But once he got goaded into the war, he did make an endless series of mistakes that led to the downfall of his country. Wes, we're going to let you go here and switch over to James in Hawaii. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine.
I've been thinking about the different things that could be changed as far as election laws go that might make it a more fair and honest system. You have, between the Republicans and Democrats, you have two, they both should fall under RICO statutes, the way they behaved this last election.
I agree. And this nation was never started with two parties. This nation was started where any group of people could form a political party, put forward a candidate, and none was given special preference. The two-party system was created to save corporations money because they only had to bribe two candidates instead of 5 or 6 to thwart the will of the election.
Well, we now live in a corporate juristic person system. I don't. I live in a republic with a democratically elected government, and I'm refusing to move. Okay, well, let's put it this way. When you go in a court of law, what type of jurisdiction, when they say statutory, what does it really mean?
I really don't want to get into a long, legal trivia debate because we're running short on time. But the issue is this country will be what we, the people, decide it's going to be. That's how it was set up, and that's how it's going to continue. And there's a lot of bad law out there. There's a lot of corruption out there. We're just going to have to take it head on. Anybody who thinks that on Trump's inauguration that miracles are going to happen, you're living in a dream world. As much of a fantasy as Hillary supporters. We're all going to have to work together, standing shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump to get this nation turned around, bring back the manufacturing, bring back the jobs, actually teach young people job skills instead of all of these fluffy liberal arts degree programs that have made them the most useless generation of millennials around the world. And it's going to take a lot of work. Anyway, James, we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Doug in Ontario. Aloha, Doug. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike.
Yes,
hello?
You're on the air. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. I was reading an article about some people wanting to flee to Canada.
Yeah.
Because of your election, and we follow it pretty close. We're about an hour from the Michigan border, and I just thought about some of the things that you're saying about so many illegal people getting into the United States. Well, let's, for example, if I want to go over into Detroit or into Michigan, I can't because I had a DUI 25 years ago. Now, this is how strict it is. It's incredible. If you have any type of a record whatsoever, even something that you've been pardoned for, if they ask you, have you ever been pardoned for any crime, you have to be honest and say yes, you're refused entry. So I have no idea how so many illegal people can get in through the south border of the United States. But if you look at Canada, it's insane. You wouldn't believe the hoops you got to jump through. Now, I have a lot of friends that are into drag racing and that, and the events they hold in Canada attracts a lot of American racers. A lot of them won't even come here now because they get their complete rigs tore right to pieces at the border, every single thing you can imagine, and sometimes they're tied up for 7-8 hours. And a lot of them just turn around and go back.
Well, Canadian tourism to the United States has suffered under our civil forfeiture laws. I was with Jim Goddard, and I have done that on his show a couple of times. Canadians will come down here, and they're carrying cash, and the American police will stop them and say, well, you're carrying too much cash. We think we suspect you may be a drug smuggler, and they'll just steal it. And it's been millions and millions
that's true, because there's a lot of, I'm a car guy, and there's a lot of guys that'll shop for rust-free cars in the South.
Yes.
And the only way you're going to get a deal is if you have cash on you. And no matter how honest you are, it doesn't matter. They'll take it, just like you said,
Yeah, it is a big problem.
There's a lot of snowbirds with very expensive RVs, and they just get torn to pieces.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
It's like we want to have good relations, but that's just ruining it for everybody.
It is.
And there's so
our tourism between TSA, civil forfeiture, and the rest of it. Our tourism is terrible. I remember when Claire and I first moved here to Hawaii many, many years ago now, we'd go down to Waikiki, and it would be just jammed with people. And today we go down there, and it's not quite a ghost town. There's still a lot of Asians walking around there, but it really isn't what it used to be. Now, our local tourism authority likes to brag about how we've got an 85% hotel occupancy rate. What they never talk about is all the hotels and resorts that are now boarded up from all of this TSA and civil forfeiture nonsense.
Well, for a lot of us people, we can't afford to go to the U.S. Because there's a 25-cent difference in the dollar.
True.
And that really adds up.
Yeah, it really does. Anyway, Doug. Yeah, Doug, I'm going to let you go here. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. I know we've got other callers waiting, but I need to get some news done here. Now, Obama is out there, like I said, he's out there trying to polish his reputation. And he was out there making a talk about how Obamacare is less than your cell phone bill. He's literally put out this infomercial trying to remind us what a great thing Obamacare is and saying that Obamacare is less than your cell phone bill and that most people will only have to pay $75. Now, my Obamacare-compliant health insurance is 4 times my cell phone bill, and I've got 2 phones on that cell phone bill. And unlike Obamacare, I actually get to use my cell phone. I don't get to use my Obamacare health insurance policy because of that sky-high deductible. Now, Obama is out there in Germany, and he made this bizarre statement that he thinks he did a pretty good job as president, but people voted for Trump because they wanted to shake things up. And I have a news flash for you, Mr. Obama. Happy people do not want to shake things up. Happy people leave things just the way they are. Unhappy people who think you did a terrible job are going to shake things up and boot the incumbent party. And that's what happened on Election Day. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with more news and maybe a few more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go ahead and take one more phone call, then get back to the news. Dave in Long Island. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Dave, are you there? Hello, Dave. Going once, going twice.
Hang on.
Okay, hang on. Dave, are you there? Okay, I guess we lost Dave. Now then,
Mike?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes, this Dave?
You're there. Okay. I just want to tell you, today I'm staying with my sister, and my sister locked the dogs in the den today. They happen to have the TV on, keep them company. When I walked by, I saw that the View was on, and on the View they were saying about how Google was going to be the arbiter of what's going to be real news and fake news, and of course, you know, the audience was yay with little birds and stars going around their heads, and you know, they were all in agreement, no critical thinking there or anything like that. Like,
well, you know,
you're
in big trouble with the ASPCA right now because making those dogs watch The View, that's cruelty to animals.
I said, I'm turning this off, guys. This is way below your intellect level, so we're going to change the channel.
Change it over to Cujo or something.
I just wanted to get that in.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. I'm going to do some more news stories. I know we got callers waiting. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to them all. I have to be a little more selective, but here we go. Now, one of the issues about immigration that keeps coming on up is the fact that these refugees and immigrants are bringing into this country diseases which previously had been eradicated. Tuberculosis, drug-resistant tuberculosis, even a couple of cases of bubonic plague. And apparently there's a list now out now, amoebiasis, giardiasis, cryptosporidiosis. We have that here in Hawaii. Malaria, visceral leishmania. I can't even pronounce these things. But there's a lot. They're literally making us sick with this immigration refugee policy, but of course that's good for the economy because now you're going to have to go to the doctor to get treated for these illnesses which haven't been in this country for 100 years, and you'll have to go to the pharmacy and buy medication, and that's good for the economy as well. Now then, very alarming story coming out of newstarget.com about how the American Medical Association has adopted a new set of ethical and professional guidelines for physicians that would punish any doctors who speak out about any issues in conventional medicine in terms of questioning the efficacy and safety of various pharmaceuticals. The AMA has been bought out by the big pharmaceutical corporations and is now taking to itself the ability to punish doctors who don't follow the narrative. You will tell your patients they need to have this medication, or you will lose your medical license. That's tyranny and dictatorship. Okay, let's grab some more phone calls. Ernest in Reno, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Ernest, are you there? Ernest in Reno? Okay.
No?
Ernest, yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Listen, Mike, I wanted to ask you, the globalization agenda, in your opinion, when do you think the origination of it was? Was it something that just started this century, or in your opinion, what do you think?
Well, the idea of a global government is not a new one, and there have been theorists and philosophers talking about it and how wonderful it would be going back centuries. But I think the idea of a single global government, I mean, that's what Alexander the Great was trying to do, for one example. But in its current incarnation, the single global government is an effort to create a system in which there are no alternatives. You're not allowed to go to another country because none exists. You're not allowed to choose a different banking system because one does not exist. You're not allowed to try alternative medication because it's banned, and so forth and so on. Any global government ultimately is going to be a terrible dictatorship just to survive the circumstances of its own creation. We know how much fraud was involved with that. Anyway, let's see. Ernest, thank you. We're going to have to let you go and take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Before we get back to the phones here, apparently over at the Washington Post, they had a columnist coming on out by Lawrence R. Samuel, basically saying it's time to abolish the separate states. We don't need the states anymore. They're not cultural identities anymore. They've all been blended together. And Americans should just get used to the idea of living in a single nation with a strong central government. They're telegraphing exactly what they want to do. And what they're doing is exactly the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended. Apparently there's a new study ranking U.S. healthcare last in the modern world. We knew it was 33rd. Apparently it's gone downhill all the way to the bottom of all modernized nations. Certainly the most expensive. Now, earlier today we were reporting on how something like 800 tons of paper gold had been dumped on the market. And I just now saw the story that may explain why that was being done. Over in India, they're having an experiment with banning currency and trying to go cashless. Everything goes through the bank. And to nobody's surprise, everybody started buying gold and drove the price up to $2,800 per ounce in India. Well, that can't be allowed to stand. People will empty their savings accounts, sell their stocks, and buy gold. And that's the reason they dumped those 800 paper tons on the market to drive the price back down. Because what they do is they'll take the real physical price and they'll blend it with the paper contracts to come up with the official price of gold. And they can create those paper contracts out of thin air as long as they want to keep that price down. All righty, let's grab a couple more phone calls here. Did we ever connect with Ernest in Reno?
He dropped.
He dropped. Okay, how about Gaither in Oklahoma? Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air.
Mike? Hi, Mike. I appreciate your optimism, but we know that you know deep inside, just like I do, that we are as Americans, we're going to have to pay back what we've done. We have destroyed the Middle East. We just because we have Trump doesn't mean that it's all going to be forgiven. We are going to have to pay this back. I don't know how or whatever we're going to do, but you know what I'm saying, deep inside.
Well, I think what we're going to see under President Trump, we're already seeing it in terms of his negotiations with world leaders, is he's calling a halt to this war agenda whereby the U.S. wanted to conquer all the resource-rich areas of the world and shackle them to the U.S. dollar. And obviously, the end of that agenda means that there are going to be some economic repercussions here in the United States. Their hard times are ahead. It almost doesn't matter who actually won the election. There's no real way out of this mess. But I think the difference between Hillary Clinton as president and Donald Trump as president is Donald Trump is going to be thinking what's best for the nation and the people, whereas Hillary Clinton was going to continue this policy of protect the banks at all costs. And I think we've had enough of that.
What are we going to tell the grandchildren of the people that we've destroyed and their houses? Do you think they're actually going to say, oh, well, since they voted in Trump, that's fine.
No,
everything's great now.
Those are places of the world that no American tourist should think about visiting for at least 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, look at Vietnam. There's a healthy tourist traffic from the U.S. to Vietnam now. It actually is a very beautiful country.
I know, but I lived in California, and the Vietnamese, even though we brought them here and give them all the 7-Elevens and the Circle K's, they still hate us.
Well, yeah, I can certainly imagine. I can certainly imagine why that happens. We have a lot of people from. Okay, we have a lot of people from the various war zones living here in Hawaii, and they're integrating, they're trying to be polite, but they're not ready to forgive and forget, nor should they. But what we need to remind them is what they dealt with were the actions of leaders who were operating contrary to the will of the American people. The American people, by and large, did not want to see any of this stuff happen. We were lied into it. We were tricked into it. In a lot of cases, it was done without our knowledge. And if they want to haul our past leaders off to the International Criminal Court and throw them in jail, I'm certainly not going to get in their way. I think it would be a good thing to have it happen for some of these war hawks to wind up in the ICC.
It'd be great that if you could explain that to them, but I don't think they're going to quite connect on this deal.
Actually, no. When I've talked to the people here and I say, we ordinary Americans didn't want to go along with this, and they say, we understand that. And their anger is focused on the political leadership, not on the American people as a whole. At least that's been my experience. Anyway, we're going to let you go here. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Frank in London. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. It's regards to a caller who said that there could be civil war in America. I disagree to a point that I was looking at CNN, I think, and I'm seeing these wimps, these quivering, weak hearts, crying and moaning and all sorts of silliness. I think these people aren't going to stand up to a civil war. They can go out there with their rental mods and do all these silly things, but I think they'll run away to their mom's house and hide in under their moms or something.
I agree. I agree. If there's a real civil war in this country, you're going to find that it's going to be very, very one-sided. I seriously doubt the rank-and-file military will side with the government that stole the presidency. But again, the reason I'm opposed to any of this stuff happening, it's always the wrong people who get killed and crippled in these conflicts. The ones who start it, the ones who trigger the events, they always escape off scot-free. I mean, now we're seeing more and more evidence that Hitler did in fact survive World War II, and he went to South America, and he used one of his doubles to stage the suicide there at the bunker. They always have getaway plans here. And ordinary people living in these war zones, they have to deal with all of it. And that's why I don't want to see it happen, but it's not up to me anymore. I don't have a switch here where I can say, yes, civil war, no civil war. I've run out of reasons to tell people to stay calm and be patient, and we're going to see the central government collapse like the Soviet Union. I get a lot of angry emails, saying we're sick and tired of hearing you say be patient. Our patience is out. The anger is there. The anger is definitely out there.
Well, definitely. And just one more thing before I go. I think the mainstream media will not be able to stop the truth. It's an avalanche now. It's too late. It doesn't matter what they say, fake news, whatever they want to say. They can say what they like. I don't think they're going to win this. I don't think they're going to win this time.
No, they're already losing. They're making themselves irrelevant, and we may see a major societal crash where all these corporate media outlets, they're having to let people go. They're losing their advertisers. I get solicitations for new advertisers for What Really Happened all the time now. I don't even have time to go through them. Everybody knows where the main focus is now shifting to. And the beautiful thing about the Internet and the independent media is it is a very pure expression of democracy in action. There's no central command authority. There's no one big corporation that owns it all. Obviously, Facebook and Google own large portions of it. But as a peer-to-peer system, they can't really shut it down. If Twitter starts canceling accounts, somebody else is going to set up another Twitter in its place, and everybody will just move over to there. People are already closing their Facebook accounts, and they're going on over to some of these new services that are coming up that are much more respectful for both for privacy and freedom of speech. And all the corporate media can do now is choose how fast they make themselves irrelevant.
Okay, Mike, thanks. I'd like to know some of these, familiar with some of these new servers, because I want to stop using Google and all these others.
Well, like I said, Russia's Yandex search engine is very good. GoGopher.com is a search engine that specifically focuses on the independent media. Yandex also has their own browser, so you can browse safely without Google knowing everything that you're doing. And you're going to see there's a market need there. There's a vacuum there for social media and browsers that people know that they can trust to not spy on them and to decide for them what they're allowed to look at.
Okay, Mike, thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now then, let's see. Let me put that away here. As you know, this last weekend we had a major quake over in New Zealand. New Zealand does get them. That's why that scenery is so beautiful that you saw in the Lord of the Rings movies. Those amazing mountains. You don't get those without a lot of shaking. They're now realizing this last earthquake was so powerful, the sea floor lifted 2 meters. Literally came up through the sand. We didn't have tsunamis here in Hawaii, but they certainly did all up and down the 2 islands, the 2 main islands of New Zealand. Somebody made an interesting little comment over at strangesounds.org that ever since that New Zealand earthquake, all of a sudden we're seeing an increase in volcanic and seismic activity around the world. Frosty, Kilauea, Colima, Santiago, Sabancaya. Mostly, though, it's around the Pacific. And obviously a quake that large has the potential to send vibration around the entire rim of the Pacific tectonic plate. Now, here in Hawaii, I can confirm we've seen an uptick both in Kilauea's volcanic outflow and in the swarm of quakes on the Big Island. Even though we are not near the edge of the tectonic plate, Hawaii's volcanoes are a hotspot volcano. They're not a subduction zone volcano. But still in all, it is all connected. A big shake like that, if it's detectable on seismographs around the world, then you know down in the rocks there's a little bit of shaking going on. And it can just be enough to upset the balance a little tiny bit. Now, speaking of natural parks like Volcanoes National Park, apparently Nestle and Coca-Cola have mounted a major effort to block a potential ban from the national parks to ban bottled water sales. First of all, the national parks have all got great water. And they have a problem with people just, unfortunately, throwing those bottles away and spoiling the scenery, and so they want to have a ban. And Nestle and Coca-Cola are fighting back. Say, why do you think we poisoned all those aquifers for? So that people would have to buy our bottled water. Let's take a phone call. Ed in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Ed, are you there? Hello, Ed.
He was having phone problems.
He's having phone problems. I guess we're all having phone problems. Isn't it wonderful to live in a third world nation where nothing really works correctly? Oh, and by the way, I wanted to do a little shout out and thanks. The other day I was talking about the difficulty of current software that I use to support Claire's choir, Sonar and Sibelius, how it's full of bugs and nobody seems to want to deal with it. And I got sent in a lot of suggestions, in some cases free, low-cost alternatives to Sonar. I am looking at them, and I do appreciate that because I know for a fact that Claire is not happy with Sonar X1. She much preferred Sonar 5. So did I. But the Microsoft says you're not allowed to be on XP any longer. You will go to Windows 10, and you will buy the new software. And in a lot of cases, the new updated software is actually worse. In one case, a particular piece of audio editing software that I used to use, they had a very sophisticated pitch correction mechanism in it, and in the newer version, they had simply taken it out and put in something that was much simpler, didn't work anywhere near as well. I don't know why. Maybe they're going to sell that more advanced system as an add-on or a plug-in that you pay for. We've seen that with Microsoft. Oh, and by the way, apparently Russia is suing Microsoft over unfair trade practices. But I remember back in the days of Windows, even before XP, Outlook would let you synchronize with another Outlook system. So Claire and I would always have our calendars synchronizing automatically. And then all of a sudden, with the next update of Outlook, that went away. Gee, I wonder why they took it out. Well, because that was the introduction of Microsoft Exchange, and if you want to synchronize your folders, you will do the Exchange. And I worked with Exchange. It's a nightmare. And the attitude of American industry, and the reason we're in such trouble, is they've lost the love of actually making a good product they can be proud of. It's all about how do we get the maximum money out of the people. One thing I would like to see Donald Trump do is rescind indemnification for product liability for the computer and software industry. Now, back in the days of the IBM PC and the Apple II, it made sense. Brand new industry had to be protected. But computers and software today are multi-billion-dollar industries. They're now critical infrastructure to our economy, to our society. But they're still operating under these laws that say you can't sue them when they sell you a poorly designed or broken product. And it doesn't make any sense at all. If you have a business and you buy a van, and because of a design flaw, the van crashes and you suffer economic harm, you can sue the manufacturer of the van. But if you buy a computerized accounting system for that same business, and because of a design flaw, it crashes and it wipes out all your accounting data, there is nothing you can do about it. And that's one of the reasons why so much of American software is so poorly done. And we're at the point right now where, like we're seeing with Yandex coming out of Russia and all these other countries, they've already taken over the lead in spaceflight from us. They're going to take over the lead in software development because they're going to understand quality products will always be appreciated by people who will spend the money it takes to get something that will work. Simple, elegant, does the job, doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles and flashing lights and pretty little displays to make it look like it's better. We need to re-incentivize American industries across the board to make a better, more reliable, more durable, more useful product, not just for the American people, but because that will bring back those foreign customers for our products. So, did we ever get Ed in Michigan back on the line?
No, didn't call back.
Didn't call back. All right, Ed, there we go. Okay, well, we're coming up here on another commercial break, our last one. We're going to be back with the last segment of today's show and a few sentiments about what's going on with this poor sportsmanship by Hillary and her people. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And real quick story here. Apparently, President Obama's half-brother, Malik Obama, who voted for Donald Trump, is now out there calling for a boycott of CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times. That's going to be easy. I don't look at any of those. But I think we're going to start seeing that. We already know that only 6% of Americans still trust the corporate media. Let's just tell everybody, turn off. There are better places to go. In fact, that list that liberal professor put on out, it's going to have the banned in Boston effect. People are going to be checking out those websites to find out what all the fuss is about. And they're going to find out that there's a lot going on that the corporate media will not tell them, that the corporate media has been actively covering on up. This is a time when we can wage a peaceful revolution with our wallets. Don't buy the newspapers anymore. Don't cancel your subscriptions. If there was some way I could get the cable TV company to shut these news channels off and give me something else for free, like the gardening channel, we would do that. But the reason every cable TV system has these media outlets on there is they are the ministry of propaganda of the government. You have no choice but to go to them for the news. Well, now you do. That's what the independent media is all about. You do have a choice, and that's why they've declared war on all of us. And they're frankly making themselves look silly. We've hit that point now where it doesn't matter what they do anymore. It only makes the public perception worse. To sit up there after lying about Saddam's nuclear weapons and everything else, for the corporate media to say that the independent media is all fake and we're all real, it's arrogant in the very least. And people, I think, are going to see through it, unless they're in the audience of The View, which I'm sure is carefully screened for a complete absence of cerebral matter before they're allowed to sit in that studio. But like I said, that guy's going to have the ASPCA on his case because forcing those dogs to watch The View, that definitely is cruelty to animals in my opinion. So we're almost here at the end of the show, and I am sure that you, like I, were kind of thinking once the election was over and Trump had won that we could take a bit of a deep breath, a well-deserved break. Unfortunately, that is not to be. George Soros and Hillary Clinton and all of these useful idiots out there with the signs, there's clearly a plan to try and hijack this election and steal the White House back from Donald Trump, and we're going to have to just stay on top of it. So, again, remember, you are all part of the independent media. Take what you learn here at the radio show, take what you find on the websites, mine, everyone that's on that list from that liberal professor. Take what you find, share it with your friends. Send the list around. Tell everybody, take a look for some of this stuff. Because working together, we can and we have shouted down all the paid prostitutes and correspondents of the corporate media. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.